yesterday we had results out of GE talking about the company, trying to make sense really of what is going on over at GE. Nick Heyman of William Blair joined us for that conversation. And Brian Sozzi, in that conversation, you asked him about one of the most important really drivers for GE shares over the last several decades, which was the dividend, which was famously slashed to a penny, essentially gone away. And now maybe, just maybe, time to start thinking about putting that back into something a little more meaningful.
Yeah, right. So some day two coverage here on GE, Myles and Julian. A couple interesting things stood out to me here from the company's earnings yesterday. First up, GE CEO Larry Culp noting their improvement in cash flow, he views it as sustainable. Okay, well, if it is in fact sustainable, why not start the discussion on potentially bringing the dividend back at some point? And I think that's why you're seeing, at least in the folks that I talk to, some chatter on that potentially happening later next year. Also worth noting, I'm just reading right now, the GE typically sends a newsletter out to folks the day after earnings. And in here, they're noting they have a $383 billion backlog. That is massive. Interesting thing, though, 80% of that backlog is, in fact, in services. So a recurring revenue stream, high margin. So you take the fact that here's a company that has been aggressively cutting down debt. You have a CEO who views the improvement in cash flow as sustainable. And you have this large backlog, and you're starting to get a sense that maybe GE does bring the dividend back later next year. And look, you have a GE shares that are yielding a paltry 0.3%. That is absolutely embarrassing. And that ultimately comes after GE kicked investors in the teeth yet again on October 30th, 2018, by taking the dividend to a penny from 12 cents to save about $4 billion a year. You have other industrial companies yielding 2 to 3%. Honeywell yielding 2% here right now, and you have 3M about 3%. So I think for GE, a dividend restoration could happen at some point later next year, and it would make sense. It would bring some new shareholders into the name. And for those investors who have ridden this stock right into the drain in the past decade, might give them a nice check for once and some form of return.
Yeah, it's interesting, Sozzi. You look at Larry Culp trying to generate not only that recurring revenue stream, but really just get the free cash flow across the business to a more manageable level. One wonders if they may go buy back some stock as a way to return capital to shareholders before you go committing to the dividend, because having a nice big dividend, getting into all those strategies is a very GE 1.0 way to think about financialized business. And we don't need to relitigate sort of that management team, but they had their decades, and we're now dealing with the aftermath of that.